now we can start working on the journal for our case. And I will be working on the mini journal that will fit this compartment, although the compartment in the lid was designed for holding a larger size journal that can be about 9 inches by 6¼ about that. The most important thing, if you want the journal to fit inside this compartment, it needs to be a bit less than 1.5 inches in width. That means that when you create a spine, maybe make it about 1/8 of an inch wide and not more than that. Because if you add something to the cover of the journal and it gets a bit bulkier than you planned, then you will not be able to enclose it in this compartment right here. So anyways, this is just a tip from me, and I'm sure you will be all right creating a journal for that compartment using either the papers from the Herbal box kit by Vectoria Designs or maybe some other papers of your choice. In any case, I am starting now to work on the journal, as I mentioned. And for the journal, we are going to need, first of all, 2 of the chipboard pieces that we have cut and for now set aside. So these measure 4.5 by 5 3/4. You can decide if you want to wrap them with fabric or with paper. I think this time I will go just with paper. I will need 2 pieces that measure 5.5 by 6 3/4. They are the same in size, and I'm still working with the craft cardstock from Joanne. I will go ahead and center each one of the chipboard pieces on the craft cardstock piece and glue both of them down to the paper, just like that. Then all around I will have a border of 1/2 inch, and I will miter the corners on both of the pieces in each of the 4 corners. Now, when both of the chipboard pieces are wrapped in craft cardstock, I will use my distress ink to distress the edges, both on the outside and on the inside of the covers. My journal will have a ribbon closure, so on one of the covers, 2 7/8 of an inch away from the top right corner, I marked the place where I'm going to attach one ribbon first, just with plain wet glue, like this. And then I will use my first cover as a template, and I will attach a piece of ribbon to the second cover as well, just by aligning them together and finding a perfect placement for the second piece of the ribbon right there. For creating the spine, the outer spine would be the correct way to say. For our journal, we will need a piece of cardstock, and it is the same craft cardstock that I used for wrapping the chipboard pieces of the cover. The cardstock piece will measure 4 3/4 by 5 3/4, and I first of all will score it on the shorter side at 1/2 inch from the left and the right hand side, and then the spacing in between two of the score lines is scored at every 1/8 of an inch. To reinforce the spine, I will use a piece of tea-dyed muslin here, and this piece measures about 3 inches wide and about 7 inches long. It should be enough to cover the piece of cardstock like so, and wrap it around at the top and at the bottom. And as you can see, it stands about 1/2 inch away from each of the last score lines on the left and right hand side of the central scored area right here. So for gluing that down, I will first mark up to where I need to apply glue, and I will just use my pencil for that, so I can see the sketched lines in there. And I will use the glue stick for gluing the fabric down to the paper. I will take it to my ironing board and just iron on top to make sure that, first of all, the glue dries, and second, that a nice bond between the fabric and the paper is created. And once done, it will look like this. I will flip it to the back side and glue the flaps at the top and at the bottom. You can now reinforce the score lines of the flaps like so. Off camera, I distressed the folds with the vintage photo distress ink. Next, to tie the future journal with the case in terms of style, I want to use this label which says journal on the spine like so. So I will kind of eyeball where exactly it needs to be, and the distressed fold lines will help me do that. And I will go ahead and stitch right around the edges of the label like so, and get back to you. This is how it looks when stitched. And since the spine is pretty simple, I think I will add some brads, maybe 2 on each side of the label right here. I will flip this to the back side, and I will find the central score line, mark the places for the future brads, and add the brads from the front of the spine. And before gluing the covers to the spine, one last thing that I wanted to do is to add a piece of lace. This is a very thin lace right at the top of the spine, in there and right here. So I will glue these down using my tacky glue, and then I will take this piece to my sewing machine and stitch at the top and at the bottom, just to make sure that everything stays in place. This is how it looks right now. I have tied double knots to secure the threads, and as soon as I'm trimming the excess thread, I'm applying just a bit of the tacky glue in there and spread it with my finger to make sure that the threads will not come undone. And now they are glued down nicely to the fabric right there. On the inside of both of the covers, I drew a guideline which is 1 3/8 of an inch away from the edge that will be close to the spine. And I have also mitered the corners of the cardstock on the spinal piece. And now I am ready to glue them down to my covers on the inside. I will apply the wet glue to the area which is marked by the line, and then I will attach the spinal piece right along that line. One side is glued down. I will do the same on the right hand side. This is how our cover looks right now, and basically it is ready to be embellished. For the front of the cover, I decided to use this piece of pattern paper, and it measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. You can also see that I zigzag stitched all around the edges. I will now go ahead and glue it down to the cover. I have also added a piece of the designer paper to the back cover of the journal. And while my cover is completely flat, I will use this moment for adding the rest of the pieces that I would like to use on the front of my journal. All of the elements except for the piece of the text paper in here are from the pack by Vectoria Designs. And here we go. This is how it looks right now. I already like it, and I just want to show you the tremendous amount of all the ephemera pieces that this kit includes. All the tags and tickets and labels and more tickets of different shapes and sizes, and the beautiful graphics on those elements. Everything is just amazing. Look at those butterflies. And here we have some little tickets. Look, of different shapes. Really, it's just amazing. Look at the amount of florals that you can cut out of this paper pack. Look at all those butterflies and more butterflies of different sizes and even colors. Look at these ones. And there are more interesting elements to add character to your journal. I also like the bee in here, and along with the bigger sized florals, there are also smaller ones, so you can add them to the smaller size journal, like the one that we are creating right here. And we could also use the bigger ones in our journal, as well as maybe create a larger journal and put it in that pull-out compartment at the top inside the lid of the case. Then come more pieces, absolutely adorable tiny file folders. Oh, this doesn't belong here. Then there is this big label which says Herbal box. There are pockets for tags. There are corner pockets as well with different pictures on them. There is a crazy amount of beautiful tags and different paper pieces that look like pages from the book, and postcards. Just look at that whole amount of ephemera that this package contains. We will now get to the pages for our journal, and of course I have already printed them and even sort of sectioned them to 3 signatures that I want to have in my journal. So each one of the signatures will have 4 double-sided printed pages from the gorgeous Herbal box project pack. And I have also prepared here some plain tea-dyed papers, as well as maybe some botanical book pages, some parchment paper, and some graph paper. So to print the pages, I went with the regular size of the horizontal pages, not the full size, but the ones that the pack provides, and I printed 2 per page on both sides. So now when I will trim the white borders, I will have here 2 double-sided double pages like these. Okay, so they are printed on both sides. They're absolutely beautiful. I like the imagery right here. Beautiful, beautiful designs. So I will fold them in half. And I will add, I think here, yeah, in this signature, I need to add 2 more pages. So once again, each one of my signatures contains just a selection of different tea-dyed or other styles of papers, and 4 digital printed pages from the pack. Next, I will just take my time and think about the order of the pages in each one of the signatures and get back to you. And here are 3 of my signatures. They start to get fuller, and this is how the whole stack of them looks like. I also printed some of the designs from the pack on the 65 pounds cardstock, and I will use these papers for the so-called signature covers. The pages for the journal itself were printed on thinner paper. Of course, we will need the inner spine to stitch our signatures to. So for that, I am going to use another piece of craft cardstock, and it measures 3 3/4 by 5 1/2. On the short side, this paper piece is scored 1 inch away from the left and right. Then I will have 3 signatures, as I have mentioned before, and between 2 of them there will be a space of 1/2 inch, and then from the first and the third signature to the covers, the space will be 3/8 of an inch. That's the piece that I will now cover. I will once again fold the side flaps only for now. Oh, and by the way, yeah, you could see the holes that I have already punched in this piece. So the I will use 3 holes pamphlet stitch, and the hole in the center is at 2 3/4, and then at the top and at the bottom the holes will be 1/2 inch away from the cardstock edge. I will use another piece of tea-dyed muslin to cover the cardstock piece all around, like so. I will do it the same way as I did with the outer spine. So I will now use my glue stick and attach the fabric to the paper. Before you cover the back of this piece with fabric, don't forget to transfer the holes to this side of the spine so that you can see them. I will go ahead and cover the other side of this piece with fabric and get back. And since I'm using glue stick for attaching the fabric to the paper, I want to make sure that it all stays in place. Over time, I decided to add the stitching at the top and at the bottom of this piece as well. Next, you will need to let this piece dry, and once it dries, you are ready to attach your signatures to the spine. Make sure that you have a template with the pre-poked holes in it in the same areas where you had the holes on the spine. I don't think I will be showing you how to stitch in the signatures because I assume that most of you already have a certain knowledge in journal making. To add some interest to my journal pages, which of course I will further on embellish, I also created 2 envelopes. And I will be just placing them somewhere between the pages of 2 out of 3 signatures. These envelopes have a thinner craft cardstock at their base, and I have embellished them with some cutouts from the paper pack, and each one of them has just a few ephemera pieces from the paper pack as well. I will be adding them, as I said, to some of the signatures, and I'm sure that in the flip through of the journal you have already seen these envelopes, so I just wanted to show you both of them at this point where I am deciding where to place them in the journal. So I think somewhere like this, and this is how they will look like once attached. So I will find a place for the second envelope too. Then I have also created plain notebook out of a few different styles, pages, and of course I embellished it with the papers from the pack. So this notebook will go somewhere in between the signatures, but it will not be attached to the spine of the journal. And then next I have right here some journaling cards that I created with the different ephemera elements from the paper pack. That's another one, and it is plain on the back. I'm still not sure if I'm going to use them as journaling cards, or maybe I will add them to the pages as tuck spots. Still not sure about that. We will see how it goes. This is one more, and I must say that I am absolutely in love with this paper pack. It is gorgeous, really. I love it. So here and there I have added some muslin pieces just for, you know, for texture. And I have layered pieces on top of other pieces to create interesting compositions. And in addition to the pieces that I have shown you until now, I have added, I will be adding 2 of these flaps that have fabric hinges, and this hinge is sandwiched and also stitched between the paper layers. And each one of these flip pages has a glassine envelope with a tag which is tucked behind it. I have also once again used some of the cut out pieces from the pack to embellish those pockets. And on the back, each one of the flip pages has a printed design which is used for the printed pages in the journal somewhere. So basically I printed a few more page designs to create these pages. So let me stitch the signatures to the spine and get back to you, and next we will already together attach the signatures with the inner spine to the cover of our journal. Okay, so my signatures are attached to the spine like so, and I have also off camera mitered the corners of the flaps like this, once again to remove a bit of the bulk in there. And we will be attaching this inner spine on top of the outer spine, which is also attached to the cover of the journal. For that you will need to draw some guidelines, and I have them right here. They are sketched 1 inch away from the folds on both sides of the spine. Right now I will take my glue and apply the glue to the flap like so. You can use fabric tack if you don't feel sure of the tacky glue that it will hold everything, but I'm using tacky glue, and I will now just align this whole piece at the top and at the bottom, and then attach it right along the guideline that I have created, and burnish, and then flip it to the other side. Once again, just form that flap and reinforce the fold. Apply the glue again to the flap. Make sure that you apply some glue to the area which is only paper. Okay, and then you will align this flap with the guideline that you have created on the front of the cover. And you can see that I am holding the signatures at a straight angle. That just helps to align all the guidelines together. Tacky glue sticks paper pretty fast, so I think I can now just fold my journal and shape it the way I want. It might take a moment. Our journal looks pretty good for now. As soon as you attach more ephemera and you add tags and you add the notebook, like in my case that I have prepared, this journal will be quite chunky. And as you can see, the spine is quite flexible, which is really nice. Now we can prepare 2 paper pieces for attaching those to the inside of the covers. And the paper piece that I have prepared measures 4 3/8 by 5 5/8. I will glue it down right here, or you can decide that you want to add a pocket. And here I have glued it down. It is the same paper, so once I add the pockets, it might be good to use some other tones, other color tones of the tags and pockets, or maybe even this. And I think I might add some stitching, and I might add some fabric pieces to the tags as well, maybe even some eyelets, everything to make it interesting and nice looking. From now I will just play with all the numerous ephemera that I have in this pack, and I will embellish my journal. You can see that there are lots and lots of things to do. I will be very busy for quite some time. You have already seen how the journal looks like, and I hope you liked it. As I mentioned in the overview of the project, I forgot to show you how to create the window frame for the top lid of your suitcase, and that's something that we're going to do right now. I have the pieces here ready for us to use. You could see the measurements of the chipboard frame from the layouts that I showed you in the first part of the tutorial, and the size of the chipboard frame is 4 1/4 by 3 1/4. The section in the center is cut out, and to cut it out I drew 4 guidelines which were 1/2 inch away from the outer edges of the chipboard piece itself. Then I glued this frame onto a piece of craft cardstock which measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/4, and once again I have 1/2 inch borders all around so that I will be able to wrap these borders, paper borders, around the chipboard frame that I have in the center. So to do that, I will first train the paper, as you can see, to fold the way I want it to fold, and then I will also cut out an opening in this frame using my ruler and the craft knife. So I will create cut lines 1/2 inch away from the inside borders of the frame. Then I will cut on the diagonal from the corners of the chipboard frame to the corners of the opening that we have just created. And then we will be able to fold these sections in like so. I will use my tacky glue for this, and I will apply a bit of the glue onto the edge of the chipboard and then to the rest of the paper flap. And then I will use my bone folder to burnish the folds like so. So each one of the flaps will have to be glued down in the same way, and I will do that now. Next, I will take a piece of acetate, and this piece is slightly smaller than the size of the frame itself. So if the frame measured 3 1/4 by 4 1/4, just like a piece of pattern paper that I will use for my background right here, you can see that the acetate frame is slightly smaller all the way around. And as you could notice, I have already applied some double-sided tape around the edges of this frame, glue it down.
to the frame like this. Just center it and don't forget to burnish. Now I will miter the corners of the frame and apply more score tape to the flaps of the frame right here. Now we are ready to wrap those around the frame, and every time when I will fold a flap, I will add just a bit of the wet glue to the edge of the chipboard. Don't forget about pressing with your bone folder in these areas of the corners, and we will do the same for the rest of the flaps. Next, I am going to color it with the Distress stain and then give it a layer of Mod Podge. And while the frame is drying, let's work on the background for it. I have prepared some elements that I think I might use, but I'm still not sure which ones of them. So I just want to see how it would look like. Here I have glued 3 of those elements down to the piece of the background paper, and the larger butterfly was mounted on a piece of foam tape. I also added a little brad to the body of the smaller butterfly, and now I can go ahead and first of all distress the edges of this paper piece, and then use some glue to attach this paper piece to the back of my frame, like so. Let me do it now. Here is our frame. You can also decide maybe to use some stamps along the edges of the frame, and I'm also going to add some leaves. These were cut out from one of the sheets from the paper collection, so I am just going to add those to the frame, maybe in the corners like so, or maybe behind the frame, as I did right here. There are some leaves tucked behind the frame, and then they're glued down to the surface of the case. So you can choose whatever way you think is the best for adding those little elements, or maybe not adding them at all. If you do create a suitcase, please tag me. I love to see what you create. Thank you so much for joining me again, and see you soon in the next tutorials. Bye!